What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is The Flash, Season 3, Episode 12, Untouchable. So, yeah, it's a good episode. It was interesting, some interesting stuff, but do we really have to go to some of those points? I mean, I don't know. I just kind of like the last episode where it felt like it was building up to a Vibe versus Gypsy showdown, and it was called a fight to the death. But as they're fighting, I'm just like, there's not going to be any death. Like there's just not. I know there's not going to be any death because they're just treating it too lighthearted. And honestly, same thing for this one. It's a little too lighthearted at times, and not that that's a bad thing. Going too grim can end up with Arrow, and that's it's a very, very, very grim show, and there's nothing fun about it half the time. But here's my problem. The first two seasons, while lighthearted, had some serious moments. It had some moments where you're just like, okay, yeah, this is very serious. We've got to deal with this. This show, it feels like right now, this season so far, the serious moments are not being treated with enough respect. I don't think. Like this whole thing with Iris possibly dying, it should be a lot more serious, and yet there's so much joking and kidding around going on. They start off the episode, while this was awesome to see Barry and Wally having to race each other and seeing Barry figure out a way to beat him by phasing through the building. All that was awesome, but it's a bunch of jokes. This is to see if Wally is fast enough to save Iris. To see if he's growing fast enough in his powers to be able to save her life. And they're just kind of kidding about it. They're just, oh, I'm going to show you up. You ready for the biggest upset in the city? Say my name. Say my name. I'm just like, yeah, funny, haha, but this is death we're talking about here. This isn't something that's just like, let's just joke about it. No, this should be treated more seriously. And then, the concept of this episode is fairly interesting. You've got a guy who I guess was created by alchemy, which I'm interested to see why it took him so long. Unless Julian is secretly becoming alchemy without us knowing right now, it feels like this guy should have already tried to exact his revenge, and yet it feels like he's just now, he just got his powers and he's just now using them. I don't know what's going on, but this guy was created by alchemy, so he remembers from Flashpoint everything that happened. He's got the ability to decay anything he touches, and so he kills two of the guys that were cops in the Flashpoint timeline. And then he's going after Joe, and then he goes after this other detective. And they were all apparently the ones who caught him and ridiculed him in front of the entire precinct. So, very interesting concept. He goes after Joe. Wally manages to stop him, but then he escapes somehow. Like, I don't know. I wish we could have seen how he escaped, because it felt like Wally blows him through a door, and then all of a sudden Barry goes downstairs and he's gone. What, does he have super speed? What just happened? But this guy, he goes to Iris's apartment, and he goes in and touches her arm. And of course, the first two guys touch, and then the guy died, like, they're just dead. With Iris, of course, it takes a good minute before it even starts to go through her arm, so yeah, for some reason, because she's the main character, it goes slower. But Caitlin has to, like, freeze her arm almost to keep the disease from spreading through her, which is a good concept. But it all just ends so happy-go-lucky again. Just like with the last episode, where it felt like it could have been a true fight to the death, where, even though Zisco won, she decides, no, it has to be to the death, and then, he has to kill her to save his own life. That could have happened. It would have been still an interesting episode. It still would have been lighthearted at times, but it wouldn't have ended all, oh, I'm not going to kill you. Even though it's supposed to be a fight to the death, we're good. And then she just decides to go along with their idea and just like, oh yeah, I'll tell him everything's okay. Same here. It feels like, what if she has to freeze her to keep her alive? Like, completely. She just has to freeze her in a cocoon. What if she has to freeze her arm and there's no antidote, so that all they have to do, they have to break off her arm. They have to cut off her arm to keep the disease from spreading throughout her body. What if she actually does die early? What does that mean now? Or, like something along those lines. Like, what if the disease was stuck in her body to the point where, like, this is why whenever Savitar's going to kill her, she's just like, it's okay, Barry, don't. Because she knows she's going to die anyway because the disease was already spreading through her. What if that's what that means? But no, it's just, oh, so she keeps her arm frozen. There's a moment where it looks like, oh no, Killer Frost is coming out. Julian talks her down, so she freezes her arm again. And then after they catch the guy that's trying to decay everything, oh, we just happen to create an antidote, so now she's all good. Where's the emotional stakes in that? Where is the holy crap, what's gonna happen? This feels like a Saturday morning cartoon, albeit a good one, but still, it's like I feel like I'm watching a kids show where, in the end, everything works out okay. You know, Teen Titans. In the end, yeah, things look like they were going to go wrong, but in the end, everything works out okay. Everything always works out okay. There's never anything that goes, oh no, something goes wrong. Oh, it's okay, we figured out a way to stop it. Yeah, that's great, but this is not a show for kids. This has probably been one of the more mature shows of the CW, just in how it's handled certain situations. I mean, the stuff with Caitlin and her husband, the stuff with um, Barry and Iris and Joe and Flashpoint and all that stuff. Things have gone wrong in the past, and they've had to deal with it. They've had to deal with these situations, and sometimes things don't always work out well. Sometimes something does go wrong. Somebody gets hurt because of it. But these past two episodes have just felt like, oh, something might go wrong, but in the end, everything works out okay. For just somehow, some Deus Ex Machina comes in, and bam, everything's 100% hunky dory. We're all good here. I don't want that in this show. I don't want them to take this show to that level. Now, I want them to keep it above the other CW shows in that it can be more mature. We can have moments like this where Iris is in a dire situation. She's about to die, and it's not at all what Barry saw in the future. So why can't we say that the timeline changed somehow? What if they cut off her arm? Barry didn't see an arm cut off in the future, so what does that mean? What does that mean, that the future has changed completely, or is this, what would that mean? But no, everything just works out okay. So yeah, that's my little rant about that. I'm not that upset about it. I am frustrated, but ultimately it's still a really good show. So it's hard for me to say, oh yeah, that was terrible, that was awful, because ultimately it wasn't that bad. It's just my personal preference. I want to see them take some more chances. I want to see them do something more emotionally just captivating instead of just everything works out okay in the end. Because things don't always work out okay. Sometimes there's not an antidote for whatever disease this guy's spreading. Sometimes there's not an easy answer. But it just feels like these past two episodes have just been so, oh, the answer's always going to be easy. It's always going to work out 100% okay. And I feel like, this kind of building up for, in the end, Iris is going to be okay. Everybody's going to be okay at the end of this season. And I don't want them to do that. I don't want it to be where everybody makes it out 100% okay, because it's just too easy. It's too easy for me. Um, so yeah, those are my thoughts there. As far as the other stuff going on, we do have Wally learning some more. I like the fact that we do see Barry is growing in that. I love the conversation he had with him about the teachers he had, the mentors he had, the two Harrison Wells, the Hunter Zolomon, Jay Garrick. I like that because it does show sort of the parallels between he had to deal with these guys who taught him. They were always there for him. They knew what they were doing. They knew how to teach him to get better. So it made sense. It made sense why he got so good so fast. With Wally, because Barry has been more of a student than a teacher, he's not really learning how to teach him yet. And in this episode, he finally realizes, I need to be teaching better. I need to be not just showing you, but also helping you step by step figure out how to do everything that I can do. I like that. I like the fact that Barry's learning to be a teacher now instead of just being the Flash. It's a different part of his character that is now growing, and it really works out very well. So I love that moment between them. Just Wally in general, I think they're handling his character a lot better. He used to be just this whiny brat who, he had Flash powers, then it got taken away because of Flashpoint not existing anymore, and then he's just whining because he wants more flash powers. He wants to be speedy. He wants, oh, Jesse got flash powers. Well, now he's pouting because he wants flash powers. He tries to kill himself to get flash powers. All of this stuff, I'm just like, yeah, he's kind of a little brat. After he got flash powers, I'm just like, okay, so now we're going to have to deal with this guy who he wants, now that he has flash powers, he wants to be a superhero, but they're not letting him use. They're too scared for his safety, which makes sense because he's just got him. Now he's gonna pout because he can't be a superhero. And so they finally agree to teach him how to use the powers. And now that he's got his way, it's almost like he's gotten to be a better character. I know that sounds awful. It's almost like you got a kid that's crying, and you finally give them what they want, and then they stop crying, and that you can actually enjoy being around them. To think about it and be like, holy crap, we just gave into their demands. It sounds awful, but because of that, now I can actually enjoy Wally as a character. Like, he's actually a good character now. Like I said, the stuff at the beginning was awesome, just seeing the sort of the brothership that he and Barry have now, which I didn't think they were actually ever going to get to. They actually do kind of feel like brothers now, where he's trying to outdo Barry because he wants to be faster than Barry. Some of the moments where, I mean, in the coffee shop where Joe is having the date with the girl, I think she's the district attorney. Her daughter's in town, and so they're having some sort of dinner at Jitters, and there's a moment where she's just like, so what do you think, Joe? The DA's daughter. She's like, so what do you think, Joe? Who's better, the Flash or Kid Flash? He's like, well, I think they're both heroes. Like, yeah, but if you had to choose, and Barry and Wally both look at him, it's like, yeah, if you had to choose, what would you say? And it's a funny scene. I mean, it works because of how well this family works together. So I really like what they've done there. It's a lot better now. I understand that to get there, we had to pretty much treat Wally as a bratty kid and give him exactly what he wanted. But now that we're there, now I can say it's a lot of fun to see them work off of each other. So the final thing to talk about is, I guess, the budding relationship between Julian and Caitlin. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I understand the parallels there. I understand why they do connect to each other, because they both kind of deal with the same thing. They both have another side of them that is evil and wants to get out and spread chaos and just be evil. But here's the thing. You can have that and have them be friends. But at the end of this episode, it almost feels like they're setting them up to go out on a date and then hook up. I don't see that. I truly do not see that. I understand the connection is there. I understand they do have that connection of the evil side, but just because two people have a connection doesn't necessarily mean they have to hook up. I've seen several people that have connections in some way. They don't always hook up. Sometimes they just become really good friends because they share a connection. I've got some female friends right now that, even though we have some sort of we have similar interests or we connect on certain levels, doesn't mean that we're going to work out as a couple. Like, that just, it doesn't always work out that way. I don't know. It just feels like the show is trying to force a couple there where it doesn't need one. I love the stuff between Barry and Iris. They handle that very well. The chemistry is there, so I don't mind that relationship for this show. But that's one of the things I've loved about the show, is they haven't really put a lot of focus into other relationships. And if they have, it's been necessary relationships, or it's been interesting relationships. This one doesn't feel necessary. It doesn't feel interesting. It just feels kind of forced and out of nowhere. I don't know. Maybe they're not going that way. Maybe it is just going to be like a coffee date as friends, but it's definitely the feel that I got as Caitlin left the room, and it was just those two alone as he's getting in the elevator. She's like, "Hey, how about we get dinner tonight?" And I'm just like, it feels like that's what they're setting up for, and I don't want that because it doesn't work. It really does not work. Anyway, but those are my thoughts on this episode as a whole. Obviously, the end sets up for the next episode, which surprisingly there was no episode last night, so thank goodness. I have a week to catch up on this, but the next one is obviously going to involve Gorilla Grodd, and we knew this was going to happen somewhere along the way, because one of the headlines did talk about Gorilla Attack City or something like that. So we knew that Gorilla Grodd was coming back at some point, but to see that it involves Harrison Wells from Earth 2 and Jessie shows up and she's like, he has my father. And I'm curious to see where this is going to go, but it definitely sets up for a very interesting episode next week. So I'm looking forward to it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What did you like and dislike about this episode? What are your thoughts on the rest of the season? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Flash reviews, and I'll see you at the next one. Peace out.